So I heard you want to be a sysadmin. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can get the SysOps Administrator certification from AWS in only 8 days. You heard that right. To prove to you that I did it in 8 days, I wanted to show you the certificate, as you can see in the bottom right corner of your screen. But also, I want to show you that on August 1st, 2019, I took the Solutions Architect Associate exam. Then 8 days later, I took the SysOps Administrator exam. So I didn't study the SysOps Administrator anytime before that. So it took me only 8 days, and I'm going to show you some techniques and tools I've used so that you can do this yourself. So you might be asking yourself, why would you want the SysOps Administrator certification? Well, you can also get this hat, you can get this shirt, you can get this backpack, you can get this water bottle, you can get a spleen. No, well, you can't get that one. But you can also get a high-paying job with the SysOps Administrator certification, which I'll show you. All right, so I found an article from 2015, which is like 5 years ago at this point. So this is like outdated as all hell. So these salaries were, of course, should be higher by this point because of inflation. But anyways, the SysOps Administrator, they claim $108,000 on average for people that have this certification. While they look at the other associates, and it's way more, like $137 for this developer associate. When I think, and I wholly agree with this, that SysOps Administrator is definitely the hardest certification, at least on the associate level. Now let me show you maybe something a little bit more accurate. So some site pay scale, and this probably is more of a correct number, average salary 108K, and you can see the kind of jobs that you can get with this. So the DevOps engineer, site reliability engineer, you can be an architect as well, solutions architect, software engineer, senior software engineer, senior systems engineer, and there's like networking stuff as well. Systems engineers, very, very popular job if you want to get this certification. Of course, the more you go on this list, the lower jobs or lower salary you're going to get, maybe. Or at least an average, or maybe not. Principal software engineer, of course, that's very late in the game, but yeah. So yeah, these are some of the jobs that you might be able to get with SysOps Administrator. So now I'm going to talk to you about how you can get and start studying for the certification right now, or if you've already started studying, I'm going to show you some key services that you might need to brush up on if you do not know already. So one of the most important things when you want to study for the certification is to know front and back all the services and what they do and all the differences between very common services. For example, there's a bunch of different security services that you might need to understand and how you can administrate AWS accounts. So you'll need to know the differences between these services. Sorry, one more thing. I do want to show you some more jobs you can get with SysOps Administrator if you weren't sold already. Like DevOps, this is on Indeed this time. So you can get DevOps instructor, you can be a cloud administrator, you can be a lead IAT architect. That sounds like a cool job. So this is probably an awesome one as well. $40, $50 an hour, that's pretty good. Stafford Technology, of course. Some of these are in Virginia because that's where I'm in Virginia. But AWS SysOps Engineer, there you go. Go ahead and apply. All right, so let's start with the services that you'll need to know for the certification. And this is probably one of the most things I wanted to know when I took all these AWS certifications. Like, what services do I need to know? Like, I just wanted a list, and AWS doesn't give you a list. But I'm going to give you a list here. So AWS config, so it's kind of like it's going to give you like a breadcrumb trail of changes made to AWS services. So for example, once you make a change, oh, I'm not even showing you. So once you make a change, I was just showing AWS config. But once you make a change, AWS config will record that change, and then you'll be able to see it in a consistent format, so you can use it with like S3 buckets, SNS, CloudWatch, whatever you want to use it with. So next service I want to talk about for this certification is AWS Ops Works. And you can use this to manage your app infrastructure. So it has a bunch of different things like Chef and Puppet, which you can use to use code to automate the configurations of all your servers, like so your servers on EC2 or on-premise. All right, you also need to know Elastic Load Balancer, and this is probably on the other associate exams as well, which I took before this one, but you don't necessarily have to, because this one is a little bit harder than the other ones. But you will need to know the two load balancers, so the application load balancer and network load balancer. So they operate on different levels. So the really is you just want to balance requests, and they have different purposes. So this one, application load balancer, layer 7, you're going to need to know that. And then network load balancer, layer 4. Classic load balancer, I don't think was asked in my exam when I took it. And they're getting rid of this anyways. So honestly, it probably wouldn't exist, but it wouldn't be on the exam, but it would be on both layer 4 and layer 7. All right, so one thing that you'll need to understand for this certification is how to make availability really happen on AWS. And one way you can do that is with Amazon Aurora, which is AWS is really like SQL database kind of system that they like to use. So it runs off MySQL and Postgres SQL compatible. And it's really available because it stores multiple copies of its data across 3 availability zones. And of course, it's going to be very fast and managed by RDS. So this is, if you're going for, I guess, a really good database, this is the one to go for. Of course, you're going to have to pay more for it, but that's whatever. And then there's also Aurora serverless. So kind of like Lambdas are serverless, you can use Aurora with serverless. There's actually a server, but you're not running a server every single time. So of course, that'll have auto scaling built in. So one thing you're going to know front and back is S3, because it's kind of like the bread and butter of AWS. And one thing I want to touch on is how do you create a lifecycle policy for an S3 bucket? So what a lifecycle policy is it basically allows you to have data move from different storage tiers. So for example, you might want to have it like normal S3 data or a bucket move to like infrequently accessed because you don't use it very often. And then maybe after like 30 days, you'll move it into Glacier. So you can it's really simple. You just click add lifecycle rule, you name the rule, and then you move, or you want to you can do it for current version or previous versions. And then you can select what you want to transfer it to and what storage class you want to transfer it to after how many days. This is a really awesome tool that AWS provides, and it saves a lot of money. So of course, you're going to know about EC2s and what their storage is. So one thing I wanted to focus on is elastic block storage, or EBS. So this is very persistent storage for EC2. So if you want to store something for long periods of time that is used by a server, then EBS is the way to go. And you'll need to know the difference between this and, of course, instance storage, which we'll get to. So EBS is recommended for when data must quickly be accessible and requires long-term persistence. So here we are to the instance store. So you'll need to know the difference, like I said. But instance store is for kind of ephemeral storage, root storage for EC2. So what are you going to use it for? So you can use it for like anything that you're not going to use, you're not going to need like later, and it'll change frequently. So stuff like buffs, caches, scratch data, and other temporary content. So security is kind of important for this exam, not as important as the security specialty, which I have another video on, by the way. But KMS is really for kind of encryption. So you'll need to know the difference between KMS and Cloud HSM. So KMS has a shared hardware, while Cloud HSM is kind of dedicated. So kind of think of that like dedicated instances for EC2s. And both allow for encryption though, so if you want to encrypt different things and be validated under FIPS 142. So KMS is symmetric only, so this is another difference that might be on the exam. KMS is symmetric only, while Cloud HSM can be both symmetric and asymmetric. Of course, it's going to be cost more for Cloud HSM, so that's why you want to choose your options wisely. So one key thing you're going to know for the certification is how you're going to move on-premise to AWS Cloud, or maybe how you're going to use them in tandem. So what Storage Gateway does is allows you to connect your on-premise services to the AWS services. So Volume Gateway is kind of what I was talking about with having AWS being in tandem with your on-premise storage. So it'll kind of be a hybrid cloud block storage, as it says here. So what this really means is it'll just be backed by the cloud. So like whatever you have in your local is also, or in your local on-premise, is also going to be backed by the cloud, which is very useful in case something happens to your on-premise data. So two important things about this Volume Gateway that you're going to need to know is the difference between cache volumes and stored volumes. So cache volumes kind of makes sense by the name. You're going to store them S3, and then it's going to cache them locally in your on-premise. While the store volumes, you're going to store the data locally, while you're going to just yeah, you're just going to store the data locally. So there's also Tape Gateway, which is kind of like data archiving in the cloud. So if you want to archive something, and this would be useful. So cloud-backed virtual tape storage. So another cool, useful utility service is Amazon Athena. So what Athena will do is allow you to query S3 buckets using SQL. And since many people know SQL, this is a very popular thing to do. So another really key service you're going to need to understand is virtual private cloud. And in that, I wanted to showcase something called VPC flow logs. So what this lets you do is it lets you capture IP traffic going into and out of your VPC. And of course, there's a lot of other information you're going to know on VPCs. And it would take me many hours to cover all of them. That's just how intense VPCs are. So another part of VPCs is access control list. Of course, it's shown here in simple storage service, but VPCs will kind of check to see access control list will check to see if someone has access, as in the name. Kind of makes sense. But by default, another key thing that they might like quiz you on is by default, it's always going to allow all traffic into the VPC. That's a key thing you're going to need to know. So another cool service that you're going to need up for certification is Amazon Inspector. So Amazon Inspector will kind of let you kind of review findings across many services against some rules that you can set up or some rules that are already set up by AWS. So the way I remember this one is kind of think of an inspector. Like inspector is going to try to see if people are breaking the law and try to inspect how they broke the law. And of course, the law in this case is the rules. So Trusted Advisor is one of the services that does multiple different things. So it can do security, performance, cost analysis, fault tolerance, and it'll check for a bunch of different things. And it'll kind of give you some recommendations and action links to do. So you can think of this like the advisor to the president. Like the president doesn't have to do what the advisor suggests, but it's a suggestion. Like you can say to stop spending so much money or perform better or something like that. So this is more of like a security thing, but it might be asked as like, maybe not as a full-on question, but maybe as like a multiple choice like blinder saying it's like the wrong answer or something like that. So what it does is allow you to get security and compliance documents for AWS. That's it, really. So now for my key tips. So I want to recommend that you at least go through all the services I talked about today, and maybe some more, at least relating ones. And before you take the exam, I strongly recommend you take a practice exam somewhere. So there's many free ones online. Of course, there's some paid ones as well you can find online as well. But if you take a practice exam, you're going to know your strengths and weaknesses. At least most of the time, at the end, they'll tell you the answers. So of course, the exam is not going to be the exact same, but it'll at least give you an understanding of maybe some services you're weak on and which you're strong on. And that's the end of this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you can give me a subscribe-a-roo, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.